Hello and welcome. My name is TyrionLanstr. Well, folks, it is time for our final episode in our series reviewing the different weapons and comparing their awakening skill versus their weapon. So we've already done our video on the infantry, we've already done our video on cavalry, we've already done our video covering the Jamie group, the Miranda group, and the Drake group. It's time to talk about the rest. So, as we've done in our past videos, we're going to go through one by one each of the different commanders, compare their 4-star awakening ability, and compare that to their no-star weapon, and then compare that to their 4-star weapon. And we're going to try to break down where the best upgrades are, what are the most meaningful, and what are the impacts that that ability really has. So, let's start with Gorel, the Weirwood Battle Axe. Okay, over here on the left, I went ahead and pulled up Gorel's 4-star awakening, just base ability, nothing else. As we can see, he gets to decrease the target's defense by 3% every time a spearman strikes. Right off the bat, you can tell this is a on-hit ability. It's going to synergize well with the Sonara and other sets like that are going to get in extra hits. Of course, that's maybe not going to synergize as well if you are trying to go mono spear, since you aren't going to be having spear commanders. Sonara and the other bleed commanders are not. But again, it kind of mirrors, I think, the Rob Stark stats type of thing, except this is decreasing defense versus Rob Stark is increasing cavalry attack. But decreasing by 3%, if we compare to the no stars, we see that they're just decreasing it by 3.5% every one time a spearman strikes. There is a cap of 100%. I will say there's no clear max before, but I don't think that max is hit very often. That's really probably only going to happen if you had, say, like a 4-star Sonara weapon that's really popping off and getting a lot of abilities in. 3.5% reduction, getting up to 100, is going to involve over 30 or around 30 hits exactly. And that's just a lot. You're not going to necessarily get that many in. But who knows? So if we compare this to Gorel's 4-star ability, we go from 3.5% with a 100% max to a 6%, 200% max. So basically doubling the base ability, not quite doubling what the no stars is, and then just doubling the max. Again, if we look at the base stats, we go from 25% spear attack, 6.25% health, double that, 50, 12.5. Pretty much standard. We see this all the time. It often likes to just double what the no star stats are, but this is a little bit below doubling. Doubling would have been 7%, so it's a little bit less. But let's go ahead and move on to Arslan. We're going to go ahead and pull up Arslan's weapon over here. All right. Oops, sorry, folks. Okay, here we go. Arslan, the pain inhibition. So Arslan's 4-star awakening ability states that every 8 seconds, Arslan will heal 2% of the wounded with the allied troops with the greatest losses. As people know, this actually can synergize quite nicely with weakness attacks with Jamie, since if you start healing, you're going to trigger weakness attacks, and that's going to be good. Just some drawbacks people should be aware of. It's only doing it for one troop lineup. As you can see, heals 2% of the wounded for the allied troop with the greatest losses. My understanding is that when they say ally, that means an allied lineup, and so you're really not going to get all of your troops using weakness attacks, just that one weakest lineup. I'll add that every 8 seconds means that you're not going to quite get it happening often enough, since weakness attacks last for 5 seconds, so you're going to kind of reset it for after those 3 seconds, so it's not a perfect synergy, but it's there. And if we compare this, though, to what happens when we get the Sand Blade weapon, oops, I apologize, folks. Put that back. There we go. If I compare that to the Sand Blade, the only real difference we get here, still 8 seconds, still 2% wounded, but we now get the 2 allied troops with the greatest losses. So now we're going to get not one lineup, but 2 lineups that we're actually healing from. definitely noteworthy. You're going to, do a little bit more synergizing, heal a little bit more, but anyone that's, used one of these setups will tell you the actual amount of healing is pretty insignificant. You really want it for the weakness attacks, and 2 out of 5 lineups, that's not going to synergize perfectly because 8 seconds is longer than 5. Still not great. So, notable, this is doubling just from getting the weapon because you're getting 2 lineups instead of 1, but not the most significant. If we look at the 4-star ability, now the difference is that we get still the 2 ally troops, but we also increase their defense by 15%. I gotta say, I think that adding a little bit of defense is not going to make a meaningful impact, but it's not nothing. But I think that as 4-star abilities go, just adding the defense, not as significant as something like making it 3 ally lineups. I think that 3 ally lineups would have made more sense to me, maybe even 4, would definitely make this feel like a more interesting ability. Hell, I think they could have even done it where they just say all 5 lineups get a healing. So, it is what it is. Okay, looking to our next up is Hector with the Black Goat Spear weapon. And if we go ahead and look at Hector's base ability, let's go right here, the Bloodthirsty Long Spear. So Hector's base ability really counters the female setups in terms of when an active army skill damage is first taken, it's going to immediately heal 50% of the troops lost due to the damage, and it will increase the lineup's attack by 15%. So, this synergizes kind of nicely against Salma, because if they do use that active army skill right at the beginning, and especially with Salma, it's going to deal a lot of damage. This is going to heal 50% of those troops. So if you were going to lose, 300,000 troops, which I've seen reports that show that, this will heal those back, and you're going to get just 150,000 losses, which is, a lot of healing to have just done right off the bat. Additionally, getting an attack buff is definitely good, but as we all know, as we just discussed with Arslan, this is good because it starts triggering weakness attacks. You're going to get weakness attacks going because you've started healing. That is always a good thing if you're running a Jamie lineup. So, comparing this to our No Stars Black Goat Spear, we can see that they now heal 55%, and instead of just increasing the attack by 15%, it's now 25%. So a add to both the heal component and to the attack increase. Also note that now we're giving 27.5 spear attack and 6.88 health versus just the 25. So we're getting a little bit more base stats here as well. Okay, so what happens when we get the 4-star Black Goat Spear? Well, again, we double these stats, and we go from 55 to 80%, and from 25 attack to 50%. I really think that this is a huge buff. I mean, if you think about it, getting a full 50% attack increase, especially if it happens right at the beginning, it's going to be really, really good. Definitely a very, very strong ability. And again, this is happening to each allied lineups. They're really the front line. But getting that healing in, getting that attack increase is going to really do a lot. Especially if it's a Salma ability that happened right at the start. You're going to get that for the entire rest of the battle. Okay. Last and certainly not least, the most expensive one that we've looked at, we will be looking at the Butterfly Descent, Diana's weapon. Again, let's first look at her awakening ability. I do not have her unlocked, so I had to take the screenshot here under the Butterfly's Blessing. So her ability after the battle begins, the Spearman defense goes up 40% for the entire battle, and then when any allied troop lands a total of 10 weakness attacks, all lineups of that troop gain a shield that absorbs 60% damage for 3 seconds, noting that shields cannot absorb bleed damage. Again, this does make some sense. If you haven't figured it out, just like the Spearmen counter Cavalry and Infantry counter Spearmen and Cavalry counter Infantry, we see that the setups, the bleed setup that goes with Infantry counters weakness, The weakness setup that is spear-based counters the cavalry female setup. Typically, it's cavalry female setup, and then the cavalry female setup counters the bleed infantry setup. It does make a lot of sense, and that is intuitive as to why that shield can't absorb bleed damage, as that would counter the counter, which the game doesn't like to do. So let's compare Diana's ability to her Butterfly Descent weapon with no stars. So we go from just 40% to still getting the same. I apologize. You do not get that 40% bonus. Instead, once it begins, you get the shield right off the bat. You gain 3 shields that absorb 60% damage for 5 seconds. And then whenever you get the 10 weakness attacks, it's still 10, you get a shield. Now it absorbs 60% damage. Again, same 60% damage as we had before. 3 seconds, all the same. The only difference here is that instead of getting the Spearman Defense, you're getting these 3 60% shields that each last for 5 seconds. It's interesting to me that this really is a kind of rarity where we have a really, really top commander, a very expensive one, that actually their ability isn't going to cause damage to your enemy, but rather protect your troops. Again, I also want to note that this is a weapon where the base stat is 30% for spear attack and 7.5% for the total health, so even a step up from Hector in that category. Next, let's go ahead and look at what happens when we go to 4 stars. Of course, we double these stats, and we can see that now we go from 3 shields to a full 6 shields that each absorb 60% damage for 5 seconds. And then now we go from 10 weakness attacks needed to just 5, and then they get their shield that does the 60% damage. This is huge. Going to just 5 weakness attacks, if you have a weakness setup that involves really any weakness setup at all, you're going to get 5 weakness attacks going pretty much every time you attack, because every single one of your lineups should have weakness setup and should be triggering that. So you should have 5 full weakness attacks, and you should be getting all lineups of that troop type gaining a shield. That is a huge buff, because it means that you can go mono spear and get a full shield for all of them every single time they attack. That it's going to absorb 60% damage for 3 seconds. That basically means you're going to just get 60% damage reduction for the whole battle once your weakness attacks start going. And considering you get this 6 shields for the beginning, if you got Drake in your lineup, you're going to start getting those weakness attacks going after these shields are up, and then you're really chilling. So you're going to have a 60% reduction pretty much the whole battle. That seems incredibly strong. Not an offensive ability, but a very, very strong, possibly the strongest defensive ability we've seen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned about the different spear weapons and how it affects their awakened abilities. There definitely are some significant changes that get made. Obviously, the more expensive ones tend to be a lot better, but that is what we expect in this game. It's just how it works. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.